Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 77. In this episode, we talk with Haley Whitehead, who is a total badass. Haley shares her experience being a Division I athlete. She played soccer at Texas Tech. She also went to school and became a mechanical engineer, and then went on to Duke University and got her master's degree in biomedical. Haley talks about some of the adventures she took, like climbing Mount Whitney, and just how she has just unshakable confidence. Stay tuned. I know that you're not going to want to miss this episode. But first, I just want to let you know we have a lot going on at Ordinary to Badass and lots to be coming in 2021. I can't wait to share it with you, but it's not too late to join. Let's be badass. If you liked this interview and you would like to do more of a deep dive, be able to ask the person that I'm interviewing questions, not everyone, or not every interview, but some, and then also be able to have accountability with a group so you can pursue your badassery. It's all about becoming more confident, and you start right from where you are, and then you'll have worksheets on certain episodes, and there'll be a monthly theme. It's going to be so freaking cool. So I would love to have you join. We started here in December, and let's rock 2020. I know that there's, 14 days left, 10 days left, whatever. Not good at math. No, I know that there's some time left in 2020, but then freaking 2021, let's get after it. Let's be badass. You can head on over to the show notes and find more details about the program. All right, let's get to this interview so you can hear from Haley. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm glad you're here. Today's guest is Haley Whitehead. Haley, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Excited to be on.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
I think I'm badass, but no, I have some ordinary tendencies. How about that?
So have you always felt like you're badass, or that you have this badassness in you, or did that come at a certain point?
I think that I have, I think like many women, there's always insecurities and doubts and things like that. But I feel like over my life, I've learned to kind of, ignore those things or overcome those things. And probably within the last 10 years or so, really come into who I am as a person, and been just a lot more content with that. And I would say pretty much since that point, I'm more on this badass train of life.
I like it. Was there anything 10 years ago that triggered that for you?
I think it was more so, I think about just figuring out who I was as a person, like leaving college, entering the workforce, trying to figure out who my own identity was as a person. And I think it was kind of just through like finding myself that I became more comfortable with who I am and was able to step into this place where, I felt like I would feel confident saying I was a badass.
I love it. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Haley Whitehead. I am very much approaching 30, so I'll be 30 in a few months. I played soccer at Texas Tech University, so I was a Division I college athlete. During that time, I also got my degree in mechanical engineering, so that was interesting being one of the only females in my entire degree plan. And then from there, I went on to Duke University, where I got my master's in biomedical engineering, and then used my degrees to get a job in the biomedical medical device industry. And so for the last 6 years, I've worked in new product development for medical devices, where we're actually developing new products to help, patients have a better life and live longer. So,
That's really
and then on top
cool.
of all that, I'm also 6 months pregnant. So adding another fun adventure to the list coming up soon.
That's so exciting. Tell me about let's go back to the playing soccer at a Division I school. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for a lot of people that end up playing Division I sports, or sports in college in general, so much of who they are growing up is founded in that sport and who they are. So I spent a lot of my years early on in childhood playing soccer, focused on soccer, and so it seemed like the right thing to do once I was at the age to pick if I wanted to be a collegiate soccer player or not. And so I went into the program more just because it seemed to be the right thing to do. And there was a lot of challenges there. When I first joined the team, I was kind of an afterthought. You could tell I definitely wasn't one of the top recruited girls or anything like that. And so rode the bench for a little bit, and definitely kind of struggled with, confidence there. And then was able actually to become a starter later on my freshman year, and was a starter for my entire conference time as a freshman, and then as a sophomore. And then after my sophomore season, I suffered an injury that ended up having me out for most of my junior and senior year. So it was an interesting thing where I had worked up to a point where I was, finally, starter, contributing member, feeling like I was playing at the top level of my game, and then to go from there down to an injured player that couldn't play at all, and then as a senior, more as a coach, mentor, cheerleader to my teammates rather than an actual contributor to the team. So learned a lot of life lessons by being a coach athlete.
Yeah. When you were riding the bench and it kind of took a hit on your confidence, do you remember what you did to become a starting player to get the confidence to keep going and push on?
At that point, it was all about putting in the extra time. So I was, doing sessions with some of our assistant coaches before practice. I was doing some fitness training after practice because I definitely needed to improve on my overall endurance. And so at that point, it was really about putting in the extra effort. And then it came down to also shining when it became my opportunity. So I got put in on a Sunday game that we were already losing, very much a situation where it was just oh, let's just put a body out there. And I knew that was my one opportunity to shine, and I made the most of it.
So do you think that other girls that were starting players at that time when you were riding the bench and doing all the extra work, were they putting in that extra work, or was that or just you or a few of you?
It was definitely not everybody. There was always those few girls that were starters that, I think were just passionate about the game and really wanting to put in the extra work. But I definitely think a lot of people just felt that they had been validated by being selected as starters. And so felt like they didn't need to put in those extra hours.
So going from riding the bench to being a starter, and then you kind of get that can become your identity. So when you got injured, how did that affect your confidence and your identity that you had just formed?
Yeah, 100%. So, I had become the starter. I was considered a leader on the team. I was getting some awards for my play. I very much felt like, who I was this kind of, quote unquote celebrity around campus, main athlete on the soccer team. It was hard. It was very difficult to be injured in the first place and have your body not feel like you're used to it feeling, but then also to be in a mindset where you're trying to recover so that you can potentially play again, but you kind of seem to be an afterthought to the team, whereas a few weeks ago or few months ago, you were the center of everyone's attention. And so it was definitely a struggle, and something that I was bitter about for a long time, and something that I think it was really after I left tech and kind of finally moved on to a different phase of my life that I finally like looked back without like bitter feelings on. So
Yeah. Um, Earlier you kind of mentioned that you learned a bunch of life lessons. Can you share like one of those life lessons with us?
yeah, I think one of the biggest things I took away is that like everything happens for a reason, and with certain timing that maybe in the moment you don't understand everything that's happening, but looking back in hindsight, you realize that was probably for the best. So my junior and senior year was by far the hardest point of my school curriculum, and I think if I would have been a starter, I wouldn't have put as much effort into my schoolwork. Like there was a lot of trips where I was still traveling as a junior and senior, but I would be like doing homework right up until game time because I knew I wasn't going to play. And so I think it was actually a little bit of a blessing in disguise that I was able to maintain my grades in this really difficult degree, which probably ultimately led me to being able to get into my graduate school university of choice. Whereas I think if I would have been a player, like my grades likely would have suffered. And so I think, you know, understanding that your timing, everything around you may not make sense in the moment, but timing tends to work out how it should. Things seem to work out how they should.
Yeah. And I've always found it easier to have that perspective than to, I mean, it's not always easy in the moment, but like it's easier than to hold grudges. Like eventually, you could be negative, you could be pissed off about it, but if you do that your whole life, like where does that get you?
Exactly. And I think it's just such a good point for like learning, right? Like it was really my first opportunity where I was forced to take a backseat role. And when I was forced to, um, be kind of the struggling person in life. And, I think it prepared me for future life struggles and kind of gave me some context moving forward on, how to behave and how to move forward the next time I got down in life type thing.
Right. And even for leadership, because if you have to kind of sit and take a different role for leadership, like it might feel like you have to be more of the cheerleader at that point, but it's still teaching you something about being a leader.
100%. My coach at one point had the talk with me about how I was most likely going to be team captain as a junior, things like that. And as soon as I got injured, all those conversations changed. And then as a senior, he came to me and said, "We want you to travel, but just so that you can mentor the younger girls." So I was actually having to go up to girls that were getting to play in games and, kind of coach them through their emotions and their thoughts about their play in the game when I wasn't even getting to play at all. So I really had to kind of shove down my own personal feelings and, um, leverage this idea of leadership being someone that can like lead from the sideline and lead not on the field
Yeah.
anymore.
Did that give you a different perspective, like seeing how these girls were going through stuff and seeing their journey when you were kind of back a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. I think it pointed out to me, I think, how much serious we take things like sports. I think for a lot of us that are college athletes, the sport becomes like life or death to us, and like how we perform in a certain game may be like, the end of the world to us. But kind of being away from it and not being on the field, I was able to have a much more objective kind of outlook on things. I think it also made me have a little bit more of a sense of, empathy for people. Like, I think because I wasn't in the situation, I was able to have a little bit more of an empathetic lens and not have my own emotions tied up into it as much.
Right. So I kind of want to switch the conversation now and talk a little bit about mechanical engineering. That's pretty
Sure.
badass that you got your degree in that and then went to Duke for that. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so it's a not very great story, but I had watched on the news when I was like 16 or 17 years old a Dateline special on prosthetics, and it was a person that was born without an arm, and they were wearing this prosthetic arm, and just seeing their face kind of light up for the first time as they were wearing this prosthesis and kind of getting that mobility back that they'd never had before. And so that kind of inspired me to go into the medical field. I said, I want to help people, and I want to be able to kind of deliver that joy to other people. And so when it came to picking a degree for college, I was torn between engineering and biomedical engineering and actual medicine. And I took a big aptitude test that actually said that I was more analytical than diagnostic. So that those skills, I guess, applied to engineers a little bit more. And so I just kind of ran with it. I said, okay, cool, let's do engineering. And I happened to choose a school for soccer that didn't have biomedical engineering. So I said, okay, let's do kind of a core function of engineering, which I chose mechanical for. And then we'll tie in the medicine side of things in graduate school or, like postgraduate work. And yeah, so just one little Dateline special kind of got me interested and got me plugged in. And I honestly didn't really know what a mechanical engineer did when I started, but here I am and really enjoy the work. And so it's been a good path so far.
So do you think if you knew all it entailed or all the hard work or how hard it would be to get there, do you think that you still would have done it?
That's hard. I mean, I think it's hard going into college to really fully understand what the course load is going to look like. So maybe I would have gone in, but it took a lot of time, a lot of studying, a lot of sleepless hours, lots of kind of intimidating problems. But I kind of liked the challenge. It was in a way a lot like soccer, where you're constantly like competing. It was just like you were competing against something else. You were competing against a topic that you didn't fully understand. And so I think I'd do it again. I like how it turned out.
Okay. I like how you put that into perspective and said competing in a topic like you didn't completely understand. I think that it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm just so stupid, or I don't get this, just because it's hard, or I'm just an idiot. Rather than thinking of it as like a challenge or a competition, like it's not you, it's just something you got to learn.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of naturally in my personality to be a competitive person and, definitely always been the person that at family game nights taking it a little bit too seriously. And then I think soccer, kind of amplified that. But I really feel like that's how I've always approached life. It's just that like these are challenges and we're just trying to figure out how to overcome them. And it's a competition of me versus the problem, not necessarily something that just like can't be conquered type
Right.
thing.
Right.
So
And you said you were one of the only females in your class. Is that right?
yeah, so mechanical engineering, for whatever reason, is just a largely male field. So I remember, having these classes of 50 to 100 people, and there was maybe like 2 or 3 girls in the entire class. And so it was never something that bothered me or intimidated me, but it was something that um, was obvious and something that made me stand out from everyone else in the room for sure.
Right. So I work, as you know, like I work in law enforcement and I see, a lot more males in that field than females, but I don't think that people from the outside see like what a benefit it is to have females in law enforcement, like the service side of things. Is there something like that for engineering that you can think of that like the benefit of having females that maybe people don't see why they would be good at it?
Yeah, I think in any field, especially a field that's dominated by like one sex or one race or things like that, it's all about just diverse perspectives. So, the company I work for now really drives on this idea that like we need diverse perspective, and I couldn't agree more because I think women happen naturally to be a little bit more empathetic and come at things from a different viewpoint. And I think you need that diverse perspective in a room, because if not, you end up leaning way towards one side, whether it's in how you're doing your work or like the products you're producing. And so I feel like there's countless examples that at work, because we're like a big group of diverse people with diverse backgrounds, we actually end up with better solutions because we've been able to collaborate and come from like our different experiences.
Right, right. And I feel like sometimes people think it's such like a canned answer, like we need diversity, but you don't get the good ideas or the good input, unless you have different angles, because not one person can think of anything or everything. Sorry.
No, 100%. I think I think sometimes the way organizations foster diversity can seem kind of inorganic. It can seem kind of fake. And so I think that's why it kind of comes off in a negative tone sometimes. But I think the more diverse perspectives you have, the better opportunity you have to just be better as an organization,
Right.
100%.
So, what would you say to the female that wants to go to school for engineering but isn't sure if she can make it or if it's for her?
I think everything's worth trying. I'm all about, going after a challenge. And then, I think there's a point where it's okay to say, this isn't for me, and to not look at it as failure, but to look at it as like a pivot point. But I think everything in life is worth trying. And there's nothing about engineering or STEM that is for some reason doable by men and not by women, and so I encourage everyone who is remotely interested in STEM to give it a try, and don't be afraid to, somewhere down the road say, hey, maybe this isn't for me, and try something else. But if you don't try, you're never going to know. And I think that the STEM world could use more diverse perspectives, whether it's from women or other minority groups.
Why do you think it's so intimidating?
I think it's hard to walk into a room or to be in an organization where you don't have a lot of allies, where you can't look around and see a lot of people that look just like you. And so I think that is intimidating. And then I think us as women are also like a little bit in our own heads, a little over analytical. And so I think if it was a male walking into a room full of women, they probably wouldn't feel the same way as a female walking into a room full of males. And so I am reading Cheryl, oh goodness, what's her name? The Lean In book. I can't remember
Sheryl Sandberg.
There you go. Sheryl Sandberg's book right now. And I think it's just funny to read how she talks about how women feel in these kind of environments, because I relate to it so much. And I actually got the book from a friend who was like, I just read this and it like spoke to me. And it's funny how we as women, like even in leadership roles, have these like insecurities, So I think for women, we just inherently are like, oh, I'm not good enough to be here. Or, oh, I'm different than all these other people. But I think if you can overcome that, shove that down, and give it an opportunity, give it a try, that you're going to find that you can succeed most of the time.
Yeah. And I heard somebody I knew was doing like lean in circles. Have you heard of that?
I haven't like heard of any in my area, but I think that would be great. Really cool to try.
Yeah. And I think they're all over, and it's just women supporting women, trying new things or leadership roles, which I think is, well, I'm always a fan of. But so is there a way that someone who wants to get into STEM, or let's just say like biomechanics, is there a way they can kind of test the waters or go to a job for a day or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that trying to understand the field you want to be a part of is really important. So I know at my company, we actually have like some high school kids that will come and like shadow for a few weeks over the summer. We're loosely tied to the medical world. So like volunteering at a hospital and kind of getting those insights, I think is really good early on to understand. But I think, even just taking that first semester to try those technical classes out isn't a bad idea. So, and I think the more early on in your career or in your college experience that you can get those kind of real world experiences, whether it's through an internship, paid or unpaid, definitely jumping on those as well.
Yeah. And I think that's important because sometimes like when you go and see something in person and you see how it's done, it like can light a fire inside you that you might not otherwise have. And you're like, oh, I'm doing this. Like I'm going to get through it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I took a class in grad school, which granted this was, after I already had my base degree, but we shadowed a pediatric surgeon. And so we were just in the OR observing. And I think it just continued to solidify for me exactly what I wanted to do. And it was to help people. And it was to create these medical devices that this surgeon was using to greatly help these people. And so I think if you can seek out opportunities like that, definitely can help kind of drive you down your career path.
Right. So, Haley, I think you're like independent and fearless and just confident. I love it. Have you, like, what do you do to tell yourself? I don't know if you have any mantras or anything you tell yourself on times where you do have self doubts or question things.
Yeah, I think, everyone can get in their own head. And I definitely think that I am not immune to that. There's definitely moments where I feel insecure or not good enough, but I always look at it as like, okay, like this is one moment, let's move on to the next and like go after this challenge. And I also try to not take failure too personally. I think a lot of times women can really like fester on failure or like not being good enough and things like that. And I really try to turn off that switch that is associated with like self-doubt and festering on failures, and really try to keep that like forward-looking mindset. So if I have a meeting where I present and I stumble over myself or have to be corrected a few times, rather than focusing on that, I go back to the drawing board and say like, okay, how do I prepare better for next time to make sure that I'm more confident in my speaking tone, or what about the technical aspects did I not understand, and like who do I need to go find to make sure that next time I'm better prepared from like the technical perspective. And so um, yeah, I think, sports, honestly, I think helped a lot with that. But it's, to me, just all about looking to the future and not looking to the past.
Yes, and I think that's so important. I love how you said, how do I prepare better for the next time? And who do I go to that can answer this? Because I just think that opens up so much. And then oftentimes if you're asking people and you're like open to their feedback, then people are willing to like mentor you or help you where they might not have before.
100%. I feel like in most of life's challenges, like taking it on by yourself is not necessarily the right thing to do. There's normally someone who's been through that situation, and can provide that kind of mentorship or insight that you're looking for, so that it's not as hard on you, and you can really, kind of leverage that other person's past mistakes or past experiences to make your next challenge easier.
Absolutely. So, can you tell me about your mindset and kind of how it's led to your badassery?
Yeah, mindset's interesting. I think inherently I try to keep in the back of my head that I am kind of keep that layer of confidence like on borderline on the edge of like cocky. And I know that's a little bit of a strange thing, but I think if I can
I
keep
love
my
it.
mind, but I think if I can keep my mindset at this level of, I'm this confident, badass woman, then, every time that maybe I'm not feeling that way, it it kind of levels me to neutral rather than leveling me down to like a place of like insecurity. And so I just try to approach every situation like, I can do this. I've done this before. I'm going to own this. This is going to be great. Rather than going in with doubts, because I think once doubts leak in, um, it can completely change how the outcome of things go. So I like to tend on this confident, cocky mindset kind of thing.
No, I hear you, because otherwise you can go down a rabbit hole. And it's like that rabbit hole of like all the self doubt is just, it's no good from there.
Yeah,
And it's hard to turn
exactly.
off.
Exactly.
So, did you learn that from somebody, or is it just something you learned over the years?
I think a lot of this kind of confidence is a little bit inherent. I definitely haven't had to struggle with things like anxiety as much as I've seen friends struggle with and things like that over the years. But I think a lot of it also comes from my parents. Really early on, they instilled in me that um, I needed to be, you know, a, they had high expectations that I needed to be more than average. I needed to get the top grade in my class. I needed to be one of the best players on the field. And, that came with a lot of pressure. But I think because I knew that no matter what, they loved me, and that like if I failed, um, they were going to be there to support me, it like helped me to push my boundaries and really feel confident, like living on this like confidence, high
Right.
confidence.
Yeah. And I think really though, it's underrated the stuff that we say to kids, and what an effect that can have on them, like on their confidence and just their future self. So I think that's powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I mentioned in my intro, I'm 6 months pregnant, and I know we have a long way to go before this kid is fully comprehending what I'm saying and what I'm pushing them to do. But I think, it definitely weighs on me, the impact I will have in this little girl's life, and making sure that, from day one, I'm helping to like lift her up to be the best person she can be, like definitely like weighs on me.
Right. Yeah. But I think also it's not just you saying something, like she's going to see your confidence and your fearlessness, and hopefully that'll rub off on her too.
Yeah, 100%. I know a lot of how I behaved, especially like early on in my life, was because I had a younger sister who was 2 years younger than me and was kind of like my mini me. And, in a lot of life situations, it was like, go above and beyond because like Carly's watching. And
Right.
so I think definitely that, this kind of lead by example or kind of mentality will be
Yeah.
there.
So I thought of a random question. So we'll see. We'll see. You don't have to answer it, but this whole thing, like talking about kids and growing up and how stuff changes. I think sometimes as a kid, we can be awkward and we can be made fun of stuff, and it kind of sticks with us forever.
Mhm.
However, some of the things that are awkward about you as a kid make you really cool as an adult. Is there anything like that for you that was like you were made fun of for, or that you were awkward about as a kid, but now it's like, you've stepped into your own with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely got the smart kid remarks, so there was definitely kind of the like, oh, you're a nerd, or, um, oh, you're like not the cool kid, you were, too into this. So that was kind of nice to see that full come full circle. And it's like, okay, yeah, I might be a nerd, but I'm also now an engineer, and I also now make medical devices that save people's lives. And so
Nice.
I think that was one piece of it. Another thing that was kind of funny is I was always kind of teased for having like a big butt. And I know this is like random, and not that like now my big butt empowers me, but I think I, those things sting as a kid. And I
Uh-huh.
think just as I grew up and I became more used to the comments, it just kind of helps you like not take things so personally.
Right.
So by the time I was in college and people would make comments, I'm like, oh, you're talking about that? Been there, done that. Like, I'm not listening to you.
And then Kim Kardashian came around, and then it's like the big thing.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm in fashion. So we're good.
Yes.
I'm on trend.
I love it. All right. So now let's just talk a little bit about badass advice, and this is going to be more of rapid fire.
Okay.
What was your turning point for accomplishing your goals and becoming a badass?
I think, which this is rapid fire, so this is not rapid at all. I think really it was graduating from undergrad and going through that experience on the soccer team that, was my first big kind of life problem to overcome. And I think once I overcame that, it led me down the path of, focusing on my career and, kind of understanding this struggle. And so I would say it was probably that point.
All right. Do you have a morning or evening routine you can share with us?
Yeah, so routines are funny. I am unfortunately not the best with routines. Um I like to just attack the day. So I am not a person that sits at the table and drinks coffee and relaxes, but I love to get up early. I love to be in the office, before everyone else, and kind of use that quiet time to really attack some of the tasks I really need to like mentally focus on. So I would say, if anything, that's my routine, is kind of being the first person up and first person in the office so that I have some time to kind of really wrap my head around the challenges of the day.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know about you, but I find like I don't even know that I'm a morning person, but I get so much dang stuff done in the morning before everybody is up and around.
Oh, I know. And I love, the people, we have a pretty flexible office culture. And so people will show up at like 9:30 and they're like, oh, good morning. And I'm like, good morning. I've already done this, and this today. Like, you're late to the game, buddy. And so, no, 100%. I understand people that think they're night owls, but there's something to be said about getting up and, really tackling the day first thing in the morning.
Yes, absolutely. Um, can you share a habit or a practice that has contributed to your success?
Habit or practice? I think that, a lot of my success has come, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but through having mentors and having friends. I just think in life, you need those people to interact with and bounce ideas off of. And so as a professional, I've really leaned on some mentors to help me through. And, as a younger person in college, I definitely had those few teammates that would let me, complain, get it out, but, we're there at the end of the day to give me advice. So I think, what would be my advice is to really rely on those mentors and those close people in your circle.
Yes, so important. I think that can be a game changer, just having positive, role models or support around you.
100%. I think, again, getting out of your own head sometimes, it's just best to talk it out and have kind of those people that have unique experiences provide that feedback.
Okay, so another random question. You're bringing it out in me. No. I know that you're an outdoor person. What's your favorite outdoor adventure?
Oh, goodness. I love to travel. I love just experiencing new cultures and new things. But since moving to Southern California about 5 or 6 years ago, I've really gotten into hiking. So Southern California has a lot of the highest peaks actually in the continental US. And so over the past few years, I've been able to do Half Dome in Yosemite, which is where you have to, climb this like rope ladder to get to the top. And then last year, I actually climbed Mount Whitney, which is the tallest mountain in the continental US. And so I think that's kind of my new outdoor adventure thing. And it's funny because I am not a fun person to hike with. I probably complain for at least 50% of the way up, but there's something about just getting to the top and knowing that like your legs brought you there, that has such a great sense of accomplishment, that it makes it all worth it. So
yes. Well, previously on the OTB podcast, we had Jenny Kotler on, and I think Campsite Vibes is her thing, and she climbed Mount Whitney, and she told us how it took her 3 times to climb it. So that's no small feat to make it to the top of that.
yeah, it was probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. We decided to break it into a 2-day thing. And so for, 3/4 of the trip, I was actually carrying like a 30 to 40 pound backpack, which just kind of added to the misery or the fun, whichever way you want to spend it. But there was something about just being up there and being higher than anything. We actually climbed it in late September, and there was snow on the ground still at the top from the previous year. So, just appreciation for nature and, kind of being completely out of your element.
Yes, it's like it's so freaking hard, but then it's so satisfying at the same time.
No, exactly. And I think for anyone that does hiking or, potentially like marathon running or some of those more, extreme mental sports, it's definitely almost as much mental as it is physical.
Yes, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. Haley, how often do you read, and can you recommend a book and share why?
Yeah, so I kind of go through phases with reading. I find that, if I may go a month without reading a book, and then I may knock out a book in like 2 or 3 days. And so I'm one that if something catches my attention, have to immediately finish it. Whereas like if I start reading a book and I don't really get into it, it might lay on my dresser for a month and a half. But, going back to what I referenced earlier, I'm really into this Lean In book by Sheryl Sandberg recently. I think it just definitely highlights the women experience in the corporate world. And then it's, such a call to action to kind of embrace who we are as women, but also to recognize how we need to flex as women to, maybe succeed and get to the next level in the workplace.
Yes. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for future generations,
100%. Yeah. And I think it's just nice to know that like, you're not the only one having these thoughts, and, it's okay to flex and kind of step out of your comfort zone to, you know, accomplish your goals.
Yeah. And I feel like Cheryl had even said something like she didn't necessarily want to be that person in the beginning. Like she didn't want to be the one talking about women like in leadership and leaning into those roles, but she was the one doing it. And so sometimes it just ends up that way. Like you find yourself with different opportunities or different situations that you didn't expect in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. I am now with my company for 6 years, and I am now in a managerial role, and it's a pretty early uh, age and time in my career to be in a managerial role. But I've found that I have all these young women coming to me and, how did you, make it to the next level? Like, how did you get to management? And I'm finding now that even I'm having to kind of like mentor these women about navigating the corporate world when, I really don't know how I got here half the time. And, maybe
Hard work.
and maybe didn't have all the confidence myself, but I definitely can relate to Cheryl on that. And, think it's important for us as women to continue to speak out and lift each other up and kind of comfort each other and let us know that it's okay to feel uncomfortable and to keep pushing and stretching.
Yes. Amen. I love it. All right. Haley, let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
I think it is, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't dwell too much on what went wrong in situations and what you're not good at. Focus on what you really are great at and use that greatness to drive to, conquer your next challenge, whether that's hiking a mountain or, owning the corporate world and getting that next promotion and things like that.
I love it. So good. Thank you so much for being on the show. You were a total badass and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it as well. Glad you're doing this podcast and, proclaiming to women that they need to, highlight and shine their badassery.
Yes. I forgot to ask, how can we connect with you?
I am probably easiest to connect with on Instagram. My handle is HAYFOWL. So Hey Fowl was my kind of nickname growing up. So that's a reference to that.
All right. And I will put that in the show notes. Thank you again. You've been a total badass and I've enjoyed talking to you.
Awesome. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.
And to all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, own it and get after it. Hey, hold up. Have you left a review on iTunes yet? If you love this podcast, I would be so grateful if you went over to iTunes and left a 5-star review. This way, other people just like you can find the show, which is so important. So share it with a friend, leave a review on iTunes, and then, of course, screenshot that review and send it to me at Ordinary to Badass on Instagram. I would be so grateful and definitely want to be able to say thank you for leaving a review. All right. Chat with you on Thursday when we talk about why Haley Whitehead is so badass.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future Spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.